Namaskar, Annyeonghaseyo. This is Sonu Trivedi, Director of the Swami Vivekanand Cultural Center at Seoul, as your host today, welcoming you to this very interesting conversation on breaking the stereotypes, gender roles in India and Republic of Korea. Let me at the outset also announce that this conversation is also a part of series of activities that we are organizing under our Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, in which we are commemorating 75 years of India's independence, its glorious civilization, cultural heritage, progressive history, and achievements of its people over the years. Friends, as we are all aware, since the focus of our today's conversation is on breaking the stereotypes, let us now focus on the main theme. We all know that though women and girls represent almost half of the humanity, gender equality remains a fundamental challenge and a question for a peaceful society and a sustainable world. Gender stereotypes and traditional gender roles have been subject to critical questioning in an ever-transforming modern world. I'm sure we all would agree that gender differences in individual psychological and behavioral responses are influenced by a variety of factors, which includes sociological, political, biological, among others, to name a few. Education plays a crucial role in breaking the glass ceiling, along with empowerment and professional development of women. Let me quote here what the legendary Mahatma from India had to say. I begin the quote: "If you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a woman, you educate a family," unquote. Friends, education of women helps her to be self-confident. We all know, we are all aware about it, better plan her, she's able to plan her future in a better manner and take decisions for herself and family. Investing in women's economic empowerment sets a direct path towards gender equality, poverty eradication, and inclusive economic growth. Keeping all this under consideration, let us all ponder over today on how does gender roles differ in different societies, how far gender equality awareness programs and gender neutral behavior during formative years shape the cognitive abilities of a young child. Are women really making use of the available opportunities to make their power count? And how does educational and employment opportunities enable women in breaking the stereotypes? To discuss these critical issues posed in all societies and many more, we have a very eminent panel, best and brightest minds, with us here today from the field of diplomacy, corporate world, and academia from India and Republic of Korea, who have been achievers in their respective spheres and has been an inspiration for the next generation of women to succeed. Let me formally welcome each of the panelists and introduce them one by one, though all of them are eminent in their own field, but just for the benefit of other participants, briefly I'll introduce each one of them. To begin with, Her Excellency Sripriya Ranganathan, who is the Ambassador of India to Republic of Korea, is a career diplomat and joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1994, immediately after obtaining her master's degree in history from University of Delhi. During her career, Ambassador Ranganathan has held a variety of positions in New Delhi and abroad, which includes Deputy Chief of Mission in Myanmar. Her other overseas postings were in Ankara and Hong Kong. During her multiple years of experience at the headquarters in New Delhi, she has served in various capacities in the Ministry of External Affairs as well as Ministry of Commerce and Industry. She is deeply interested in issues relating to women's leadership and empowerment and tries to make time for activities related to these issues. Her other interests include reading, hiking, travel, yoga, and music. Coming to our next speaker, Ms. Heekyung Jo Min, who is from the corporate world. Ms. Min is the Executive Vice President and Executive Director of CSV Management at CJ Cheiljedang in Korea. Her role as a business leader and social innovator is to create a sustainable future for CJ Group by driving and coordinating CSV and CSR efforts. She oversees CJ's core values that accelerate the social and business innovation. Her commitment to creating shared value was developed through her experience in both government and private companies with extensive experience in HR, finance, and intercultural management. Ms. Min has a wide experience in financial sector, which she has acquired through her various assignments in New York, Tokyo, and London. She holds an MBA in Finance and Accounting from Columbia University and BA in Music. That's quite interesting. She speaks and writes extensively in Korea and internationally on large corporations' social responsibilities. Our third speaker is Professor Yunkeum Chang, who is the president of Sookmyung Women's University in Seoul. In her role as president of the university, Professor Chang is focused towards building a differentiated educational contents to nurture creative and converse talents who can embrace the world. She's also a professor of Department of Library and Information Science in Sookmyung University and has been a visiting scholar at Drexel University at Philadelphia and Columbia University, New York. Currently, she is a chair of Seoul Forum of University and also serves as advisory committee member of several national and international bodies. Professor Chang holds a PhD in Library and Information Science from University of Wisconsin and MLS in Library and Information Science from Indiana University. And a final speaker is Professor Santishree Pandit from Jawaharlal Nehru University, who is currently the Vice-Chancellor, the first woman Vice-Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University. And she's also a professor of politics and public administration at Savitribai Phule University, Pune. Born in St. Petersburg, Russia, Professor Santishree obtained her bachelor's degree from Presidency College in Chennai, MPhil and PhD in international politics from JNU, and postdoctoral diploma in peace and conflict studies from Sweden's Uppsala University. She began her teaching career from Goa University in 1988 and moved to University of Pune in 1991, where she was also holding the additional charge of Director International Center. She's been a member of Board of Studies of several universities in India and governing council members of various national and international bodies. She's fluent in 6 languages, including Tamil, Telugu, Sanskrit, Marathi, Hindi, and English, and she can understand Kannada, Konkani, and Malayalam. That's also quite interesting. After this long introduction, let me give the floor to the panelists and begin the conversation. Friends, if the time would permit, we will take some direct questions from the live participants. You may write your questions in the chat box or raise your hands virtually from the participant window on the screen. But right away, let me pose some direct questions to the panelists who are with us here today. Well, this is a common question which I would like to raise to all the panelists. As we know, each one of you is an achiever in your respective fields. So can you share how you have achieved success in your career? Just to begin with, maybe we can begin with our ambassador, Excellency Sripriya Ranganathan, and then we will move on, but we'll move to the other panelists.
I was hoping, Sonu, to be the last to speak, but you have given me this this privilege. And first of all, I would like to add my welcome to the welcome that you have already given to our very distinguished leaders who have joined us today. Joe and Professor Chang and our the Vice Chancellor of JNU. It's really a pleasure to be able to share this virtual stage with you today. As far as your question goes, I would say that in my case, I have been very fortunate. I have grown up in a city where the opportunities for awareness and opportunities both existed. And I was also very fortunate in that I was born in a family which is a very progressive family, where it was always expected and understood that the 2 girls, that is I and my sister, would be as focused on education and crafting a career as the boy in the family, that is my brother. So my parents somehow always had that idea that even that whether we were male or female, gender doesn't matter. And I think that is the biggest strength that I have always carried, that I have embraced this view that gender is irrelevant when it comes to doing what I believe I want to do, pursuing the avenues that interested me, and aspiring for excellence in the field that I've chosen for myself, which is diplomacy. I must also say that I've been very fortunate also in that the Ministry of External Affairs, which is my parent department, is actually gender blind, and I don't think there is any situation in which the fact that I am a woman has either helped or hindered me, and that has been a very liberating feeling in itself. So I'll stop there, Sonu, and thank you so much for putting this together.
Now, can we have your response, Ms. Heekyung Min?
Thank you for the opportunity to be participating in this very meaningful discussion. And I actually had the reflection of my career, as well as I asked a few women, very talented women in my team, what they think as their success factor. Basically, one thing for sure for everyone is that everyone is hardworking. There's no question about it. But as the ambassador said, I think we were very fortunate, or we were able to interpret the situation that we were into something positive. Like, for example, I'm a second daughter of 6 girls and 1 boy. So as you can imagine, there's a very mixed message that the women worth nothing. But at the same time, because of that, my mom, can you imagine you had to just having to have more children until you have a more boy. So my mom also gave a very good education for women, and then made us to be very strong. So I think we are also the result of our circumstances. But I think, another thing that all the successful women is just that we are very perseverant. I mean, we just keep going on. No matter what happens, we just get up and go again. So I think those are probably the ones, and the humility. I think, as a woman, that if you have to be aggressive, but if you are actually making other people enemies, you can't really continue. So that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Min. Now, Professor Chang, let us hear from your experience.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Ambassador Ranganathan, for inviting me to join this important conversation. I'm honored to be joining this panel with Ambassador Ranganathan, Vice President Min, Professor Pandit, and Dr. Trivedi. Often we talk about the path to success for a particular career, but in reality, sometimes there are defined paths, and then many times there is no path. In my professional life, it has helped me to always stay ready and willing to surprise yourself. When I started working on a master's degree in library science in US, the obvious career path was to become an information specialist. And one of my advisors told me that I would be a great professor, but I knew that there was no clear route to pursuing and finding a teaching position at the university level. And also I was a young mother, and I was still new to living in the US. It took a long time, but 15 years later, I became the first professor in my family. Similar to the Vice President Min, we have 5 girls and 1 boy in my family. By keeping an open mind to possibilities beyond what I could see or hear about right in front of me, I gave myself the freedom to explore and create my own new path. In my current role as president of Sookmyung Women's University, I hope to equip and inspire our students to give themselves permission to experience that kind of open freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chang. Professor Pandit, can we have your take on this?
Thank you, respected Ambassador Shri Ranganathan, Sonu Trivedi, Ms. Heekyung Min, and Professor Chang. I'm so happy to join all of you. I was also born into a very progressive family in the state of Tamil Nadu. Though I was born in Russia, I grew up in Chennai. I lost my mother very early. So my father never married again. So the stereotype that men marry, and so my father sacrificed or literally brought me up as a single father. So I rather would say that there broke all this gender stereotypes that was there. And he allowed me to grow freely without saying that this was how a boy or a girl grew up. But when I joined my workplace, unlike the Ministry of External Affairs, academia is not gender blind. Unfortunately, state universities, there are hidden masculinities where they use different ideologies in the way they can especially stop women. Misogynist, including all type of so-called liberal forward-looking ideologies, are also used to mask up the gender or what to say, make the atmosphere a little unfriendly, quite unfriendly for women. Especially, let me tell you, I stood for elections. I was the secretary of the Teachers Union for 14 years. So they didn't attack me because I'm a woman. They said I'm an outsider in the state of Maharashtra. So there are ways and means where identities are used because I won the election. Had I lost it, defeating all the male candidates. So maybe, but in academia, it is well entrenched and I think very unfortunate, but then it is used in different hidden ways in India even today. What's surprising is I'm getting support from the most unexpected quarters rather than where you expect that support to come in from. So I would rather say in my bringing up, I had absolute liberation with a father as well as my husband being extraordinarily, what to say, egalitarian and practicing gender equality. But in my workplace, initially, what to say, it was not open. It was very hidden, misogynist manipulations. And later, I realized that different means were used, especially if a woman came to the topmost position. You will be surprised. India's most best university is Jawaharlal Nehru. I'm the first woman Vice-Chancellor. That itself will give you the message. I'm the 13th Vice-Chancellor, and we are thought to be the most liberal place in academia. And this is the situation. So I would say it's a mixed bag. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pandit, for that very strong opinion. And certainly we have some differences in the opinion, the diplomatic community being blind, gender blind, academia, gender biased. And then the other panelists have also, as some of the common points that have come up is like how family values, perseverance, humility, and our own personal efforts have contributed a lot. And certainly, I think this would be an inspiration for all our panelists and other participants who are with us here today. Now, again, taking forward this conversation with Professor Pandit, in fact, as you pointed out that you were born in Russia and then later you came to India and you've had your education in India. So, and based on your own experience, do you think are gender roles more fluid in developed societies? Have you personally either received or denied, have you ever been denied an opportunity because of being a woman?
I think as I said, even in Western developed, I've been in the United States of America because my husband works there. And I also worked there for some time. So there it is, even in the workplace, there are very, very strict rules. So you don't see that. But I think it's there within society as such. So I wouldn't say divide it that way. In India, there are a lot of liberal spaces. Only I was saying in certain academic spaces, it's not so what to say, fluid. But in India, I think it's getting better. It's getting fluid. I think many people realize that women should be, what to say, entering spaces. What I'm saying is at the entry level, you have a high number of women. You know, JNU today has more than 50% women students than male students. At the level of assistant professor, women are higher. But when it comes to leadership positions, women are still outnumbered, meaning compared to our population. See, we have 54 central universities. How many women vice-chancellors are there? 5. And take it geographically. I'm the only one outside the Hindi heartland. First woman to represent states beyond the Hindi heartland, be the first. I thought there should have been many more women before me. It's not that women are not qualified. I think because we do 3 jobs rather than 1 job, we multitask, and the trajectory of our progress, where we have to go into the associate and professor, gets more delayed than for men. And you know, to become a vice-chancellor, you need certain minimum qualifications. Many times women don't have that qualification, and many times they don't reach the topmost position. So I think we will have to work this out. I won't say that everybody is, there are a lot of liberal spaces, and in India, they're opening up now. I would congratulate the present government for taking an extremely bold decision and opening up huge spaces for women and for women's empowerment.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. Now, Professor Chang, let me have your take on this. As you are heading the university, which is a women's university, so how do you see this as opposed to what Professor Pandit had to say?
When I first get this question, it's a very interesting question, but also very difficult question. There could be a distinction between more or less developed countries, but I think gender bias and stereotypes cut across those lines for other reasons at the both macro and micro level. For example, what type of socio-economic opportunities are available to and pursued by women compared to men? How does access to education compare to girls and boys? Are there cultural traditions that are matriarchal or the patriarchal? In many different countries, we made significant progress on key challenges to closing the gender gap in the 20 years before the COVID-19 pandemic. But the pandemic has set us back, I think. You may be familiar with the statistic that 129 million girls do not go to school. That figure was before the pandemic. And now an additional 11 million girls may not return to school after the pandemic. Researchers are considering the different reasons for this. Even before the pandemic, girls in the primary school age group spent 40% more time doing household work than boys. And women in Asia and the Pacific spend 4 times more time than men on unpaid care work, including direct personal care and household work. The pandemic made this gap wider. Household and care work, which were already falling heavily on women and girls before the pandemic, increased significantly during the pandemic, with more family members becoming ill and more children staying home and requiring care during the business hours. This means that those women and girls now have even less time for paid work and school than they did before. In Korea, there was an overall decrease in women's participation in the labor force during the pandemic. It is critical that we continue to strive for gender equality across all the global community. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chang. Now moving over to Ms. Jomin, since you have traveled across the globe and you've had the experience of being a part of some government as well as private enterprises in different parts of the world. So based on your experience, how do you think that gender roles are more fluid in developed societies? And have you ever been denied an opportunity because of being a woman?
I started my career in the States, and then that's early 80s. So it's 40 years ago. And I see the opportunities were given. I mean, I actually didn't feel that I was discriminated as a junior banking person. I don't think I was discriminated against for being a woman, but that's because. But even then, I looked at at that time there was no senior position by a woman, and my classmates were actually my classmates from business school were like a first women senior position, first women. So even in the States, I mean, they were a little faster or earlier. I think we're in the same path. So I think it's more, I don't, like as Professor said, whether how to define developed society or not, but I have to say that in my experience, like UK or US, there were the movements was earlier. However, I still see that there is still the number hasn't changed, not as fast in the top position. So I think we still have a lot of like I shouldn't say. I mean, there's still a lot of challenges, but every time I discuss these things with my classmates from business school, or the people in the senior position now, it's the matter of it's, I guess at the top level it also becomes the individual's ability, and the individual ability is not only the personal ability, but their career opportunities like a pile up and then becomes someone. So I think what we're really working now, we see nowadays, is that we're trying to correct the numbers at the top, which I see it is really good. I'm not complaining about it. But I think unless we really try to change the whole system so that more people are becoming ready. I mean, the President Chang said that you have to be ready. Unless we have so many people prepare these women to be ready for those positions, it will be very difficult to just to change the numbers.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Min. And now moving over to our ambassador, do you think, Ambassador Ranganathan, that these gender roles are more fluid in developed societies, or even to this question, whether you've been denied any opportunity being a woman, if you can respond?
I think as far as I mean, I would take a very commonsensical make a very commonsensical response to that question, which is to say that as a society and an economy develop, I think there is far greater breadth of opportunity and far greater access to education. And I really see education as being fundamental to the empowerment and the confidence of women. So whether it is whether that confidence and that empowerment can be translated, and those opportunities can be translated into a greater presence of women in leadership positions, that is a matter of I think which we will have to look back on and do a far more detailed analysis. I mean, as Professor Pandit pointed out, there is still a long way for us to go in India before we are anywhere close to gender equality. I mean, I mentioned, and I still maintain at a very personal level, I think I have never felt that the fact that I am a woman has held me back in any way. But when I look at the data, and I pulled that out before I came for this session because I just wanted to share that, and I think this gives a glimpse on where Indian women are positioned today. And if I look at, let me start with my own ministry. 25% of the personnel strength of the Indian Foreign Office is female. And I think that is still, it's not bad, but it's not great. We are nowhere near where we ought to be. We have a total of 22 women ambassadors and consul generals around the world. And that to me is a very small number. We should be far more. Even if we take the 25 percentile as being the kind of the catchment area, we should be at least representing at that level also at the leadership positions. I look at the Indian Parliament. Now, the Indian Parliament is the upper house and the lower house put together is 788 members. Of that, only 790 members. Of that, only 103 are women. Now, that is what, 12%, 13% of the overall strength of the Indian Parliament. I look at the Indian police. Just 12% of the Indian strength of the Indian police force is women. Now, these are, I think, indicators of a larger issue that we need to confront. Judiciary, I mean, the other big pillar of Indian democracy is the judiciary. Just 12% of India's Supreme Court and High Court judges are women. We've never had a woman Chief Justice. We will have, if all goes well, we will have our first woman Chief Justice after 75 years of our journey as a nation. We are set to have our first woman Chief Justice in the year 2027. Now, to my mind, these are indicators of a journey that has commenced but has nowhere near reached the destination that we ought to have reached. So therefore, I am completely on the same page as Dr. Pandit. Having said that, I do believe that with development comes education, comes employment opportunities, comes the opportunities to, in a way, marry different, marry vocation, commitment, responsibilities, and financially rewarding opportunities. And therefore, with development, you should see, logically speaking, a more gender equal society and world.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, we still have a long way to go, but I'm sure everyone would agree that we should all be proud of whatever we have achieved if we compare it with our previous generations. Now moving forward, as we all understand that gender roles refer to the gender characteristics that a society assigns to men and women. It is a universal phenomena that men tend to be seen as independent, aggressive, and ambitious, whereas women are seen as affectionate, gentle, compassionate, and risk-averse. So my question to Professor Chang, if you can respond to this, how do you think, do you subscribe to the thinking that certain professions are extremely gendered? Or can you give, based on your experience with your own women's girl students in your university, do they see some professions as completely gendered?
Okay, first I want to start with my position as a president at the university. Female president in Korea, the female president, university president, we have probably the less than 5% of the university president is a female. Still a long way to go. And as a student level, there is a data that shows that the proportion of women in the certain field is significantly lower than men. And in Korea, there are 3 times more male ICT graduates than female graduates. I think it's different from the India's case. And there are 3 times more male STEM graduates than female graduates. The challenge for all of us is how to address gender inequality. At Sookmyung Women's University, one area that we have focused on is ICT education and leadership training for women and girls. The university was appointed to be a UNESCO chair for communication technology for women in 1998. And we were also appointed to be a host university of the UNESCO Untitled program in 2015, which focused on women's empowerment through ICT skills and leadership education. Sookmyung has partnered with national and international organizations in both public and private sectors to lead research training and survey and workshops. And we all see the data on a gender gap in different professions, and we can choose how to respond to create opportunities for women. I think that was the thing that we have to solve the problem.
Thank you, Professor Jeong, for this. Ms. Jomin, can we have your response on this? Do you think some professions are more gendered?
I think your question could be actually interpreted in 2 ways. Do people think that some professions are more gender friendly? Either way, either more gender friendly for women or gender friendly for male. And the other part of the question could be, but then, there are more professions like the gender skewed. And do I agree with the phenomena that gender skewed, that there is a justification and reasoning behind the gender skewment? I think both, to answer is yes. I think there are some professions that gender friendly, or the should be more gender, I guess, I shouldn't say gender friendly, but what women can do a better job. For example, in our research center, our research lab, there are proportionally a lot of researchers are women. And then that's actually ironical because, as Professor Chang pointed out, the President Chang pointed out, there are proportionally small number of women graduate with the science degrees, but we find that in the lab, they're very responsible, they're very capable, they're doing really well. Recently, we have a women lab head, but before that, always the leadership level, there were men. So I think, but then that was, I think it had to do with a hidden bias, which was accessibility for, you are a good scientist, but you do need the different skills to become a leader of the science lab. And I think we denied those, the development of those women to become a leader of those areas. So yes, there are the gender bias in terms of numbers, but I think a lot of them are because our system's not good at correcting those things. And I think, of course, what do I think about business? I think the business is the same. At the leadership level, to become executive level, you do need a different types of skills to be developed while you are in business. And if you are not exposed to those development of those specific skills, then you will be denied the opportunity. So it's almost like, the chicken egg thing. But I think to answer to your question, yes, and I really see to be changed in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Bin, for your response. Now, moving over to Professor Pandit, do you think some professions are extremely gendered? For example, like teaching in primary school or elementary school or nursing or hospitality. Do you think these are some domains which are specifically meant for women?
I would basically say these are socially constructed rather than being biologically true. Because a woman is not born a woman, she's made into a woman. Biologically, if you ask any gynecologist or any doctor, the women's chromosome XX is much more genetically stronger than the fragile XY chromosome. So it is socially constructed. And I agree with you, yes, especially unpaid jobs, they say women should do. Take, for example, cooking at home. And it's cooking at home because it's not paid for, they say the women should do it. But when they hotels and other places where you need chefs, the men are there because they're paid very well. So this whole thing, I would say, is more monetarily and socially constructed. So, and that does influence because that creates the stereotypes. And even I would agree with Dr. Min, that even in India, engineering and science has very few graduates. We are around 17 to 25% still. And the reason, because in India, we have a thing that women are educated for marriage. Men are educated for a career. So marriage is seen as a very important thing when it comes to women, even today. With the ambassador, I'll agree, there are many families that may not practice it, but over and above, most girls, whenever they drop out of their doctorate or other things, when I ask them, they say, madam, we have to get married, and then childbearing. These are issues that come in the way of their continuous education expectation. So I would say, yes, gendering is there, but it's slowly going down in India because I'll tell you, we have the Mahabharata and we have the image of Draupadi. Draupadi never cooked. It is her two husbands, Nala, Bhima, who cooked. So I would rather say we should go back to that tradition. She literally ran the war. See, literally she was reminding her 5 husbands how they should go to war. She never cooked. So cooking is not something people cannot say was religiously made compulsory in any way. So I would still say this gendering is more socially constructed, and it's important that we break these barriers, but it'll take a long time for us because we will need the help of men as well. I see it as two wheels to a vehicle. One is the women and the other are the men. We have to go together in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. Now, finally, let me have the take of Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan on this. Do you think some professions are extremely gendered?
You know, I would wholeheartedly agree with Professor Pandit in saying that I cannot believe that there is any profession or any job that a woman is unable to perform because she happens to be a woman. I think it's all in the mind, and I think it's all in the social conditioning. Jo also mentioned when she had spoken earlier about the the behavior, and I think she mentioned humility as being one of the assets which women have. I think Professor Chang also mentioned that there is a certain behavior that is expected of women, and I have noticed this repeatedly in my own growth in my career. There is a lot of soul searching and a lot of second guessing that women do. I think we are predisposed to doing this. And I don't see this sort of hesitation and this sort of doubt, self-doubt in the mind of most of my male peers, for good or for bad. I don't know if this is a good thing or this is a bad thing. But I think women have a tendency to ask themselves when they are thinking about a job or an opportunity is being offered, that can I do this? Will I be capable? That innate confidence which somehow our male counterparts seem to have. And perhaps that is part of the conditioning and the way we are brought up, in which we are. I have also been taught that as a woman, I should not be aggressive. I should be, I should listen more. I should talk less. And I think some of these are good lessons, because I do subscribe to the philosophy that by listening more and talking less, I can achieve more. And I guess that has been one of my strengths. But it could also be seen as one of my weaknesses. And I would give you one anecdote from about 10 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, when I was a newly minted joint secretary in the ministry, looking after our relations with 2 of our neighbors, where in any foreign office, the relationship with neighbors would typically involve a lot of interface with the security agencies. Both the military and the civilian security agencies. So there have been so many meetings in which I have been the only female in a sea of men. And the tendency in the early days was for people to look at me. I'm quite short. I'm not a very imposing figure. To kind of skim over me and move on to the next person, because when we had interministerial meetings, I would be the only representative from MEA, the only female. So as it is, MEA is often seen in security agency parlance as being, soft and not very in tune with the security priorities of the country. So I took great pleasure in disabusing them of all these misconceptions and preconceptions. And I'm very happy to report that after about 6 months, they would not overlook me, and they would say, okay, let's hear what Sripriya has to say, and let's hear what the representative of MEA has to say. So I think it is to a great extent in our own minds and in our own social conditioning. We've all grown up as children, you know, we would see, oh, you're a girl, you'll be a teacher, you'll be a nurse, you'll be a doctor. At most, it would be a doctor. No, very few would say, are you going to be an engineer? Are you going to be an astronaut? Are you going to be a policeman? So, you know, it is, I think, for us to take this conditioning, take the good parts, leave out what doesn't make sense in the world that we live in today, and create a better platform for the generations of women who are following after us, because we have to make it easier for them.
Thank you, ma'am, for your response. Professor Chang has to leave, so let me first pose the direct question to her. There is a question in the chat box. Can I have Dr. Aditi Singh on the screen? She's research professor at Hankook University of Foreign Studies. Dr. Aditi Singh, can you raise your question here?
Hi. Hello, Professor Chang. Actually, it flows from what Professor Chang was talking about, the contribution of women in the domestic sphere. But my question pertains to the Indian context, where how do we account for the invisibilization of women's work in the domestic sphere, where it's not accounted for in the employment metrics or in the GDP? So wouldn't recognizing their contribution sort of initiate the process of economic empowerment? The note on which Dr. Trivedi, you opened the panel for discussion. So, you know, maybe Ambassador Ranganathan or Professor Pandit could chime in. So yeah, I just wanted to ask that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think it's connected to the question number 4, and I think the gender bias and stereotypes are the embedded, if the gender bias and the stereotypes are embedded into laws, regulations, policies, and practices, then there is a limit to the impact that we can make in creating the exact same opportunities and available to women that are available to men. So that I always think that we still need to work on improving the level of participation by women in the opportunities that are available to them, but we also need to improve the quality of participation. So after the pandemic, when I had a meeting, and sometimes with the faculty members, and it was the year in 2020, and everybody was at home, they could not go to work and did a conference on the Zoom. And if the female faculty members, if they happen to bring their child on the Zoom meeting, we all think that, well, it happens, yet it's a very normal thing. But sometimes the male faculty member bring the child on the Zoom, everybody starting to say, you are such a best dad. Oh, how wonderful, you're so sweet. And for the female faculty members, we never talk about those things. It's for them, it's just a normal thing. So we have to think about that kind of the social norm, that the household work, or all those things are for female, not for male. And if even for the laws, regulations, policy, and practices, it's embedded with those things. And that's the way that we have to improve, continually working together for changing those kind of things.
Thank you, Professor Chang. How do you think, and what comes to your mind if we think about, or if you have to recommend, what can women do to support the next generation of women to succeed? For example, the millennials or the generation Z, since you are dealing with young minds, young bright minds in your university.
I think it's the answer for the number 5 questions. I think that this is a unique moment in time. The pandemic is responsible for the fundamental change to how we work, how we learn, how we consume, and how we produce. As we consider how to respond to these types of changes, we need to adapt our strategy for empowering women and girls. And many of us are used to social distance now, but I think that a simple, powerful tool we should relearn is connecting. I view mentorship as a form of teaching and learning, And at Sookmyung's case, we had a digital networking platform called SM Bridge, where students and the alumni can connect across industries. A student can ask a question to a pool of alumni, then multiple alumni can respond. Alumni can also connect with other alumni who have different level of experience, so they can learn and teach and continue outside of the classroom. So I think this is very important. And additionally, I see this kind of conversation like this one today as a way to continue sharing, growing, and inspiring each other as we all focus on the empowering women.
Thank you. Professor Pandit, can we have your response on this, as you're also dealing with young students earlier at Pune University and now at JNU. So what in your view can women do to support the next generation of women to succeed?
I think one is we have to be very empathetic and sympathetic, because all students do not come from similar backgrounds. Especially both at Pune and more at JNU, I've seen there are many young girls who come from extremely marginalized, families, very poor families, and many of them have faced domestic violence. Just the other day, I had a demand from the Birsa Ambedkar Phule Students Organization that all women who are given admission should be given hostels, because we are having the number of admissions are higher than the hostels that we can provide in JNU. And one of the reasons they gave me is that these young girls face a lot of domestic violence in the home. So this was something that, empathize. So that is something that we are working to, because one is empathy. As a woman who has been able to reach to the topmost position, I would rather see that the campus is more gender sensitive. Because if you see Indian campuses, still you have a lot of male professors who are very insensitive when they talk to women in the workplace. It's more like a master-client relationship rather than, and there we are trying to sensitize and work with faculty so that, there is no discrimination on the campus. So my second is a gender-sensitive campus. And third is to tell the girls that marriage is not the be-all and end-all of life. Like boys marry and go ahead, girls also can marry and go ahead. And in India, we have one of the most liberal laws. So please make use of it. It's not that the legal, in India, I think law is much more ahead than society. So this is another awareness we want to create with young girls, because I see the majority of them don't come from the middle class of the enlightened families where the girl child is not discriminated. Usually, so this is one thing. And finally, I would only like to tell all of them, in the words of Mary Anglo, that you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I rise. So I tell girls, women, that we should have, develop the means to, I wouldn't say fight back, but in a very, peaceful manner, and do it what they want to pursue their careers. And I think in India, we are making campuses extremely gender friendly. In JNU, it's extremely gender friendly for most of the girl students here, but we want to make it still better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Pandit, for your response. Now, moving over to Ms. Jo Min, as you are in the corporate world, what comes to your mind if you have to say something for inspiring the young millennials and Generation Z, young bright students and young bright minds?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that everyone, including me, I think we have to be very cognizant about our own bias. I mean, I speak a lot to these conferences, and sometimes I think that, like I actually reflect on my own behavior. And I think, as like we are much better gender friendly society than before, but we still have a long way to go. But then, and every day we face with the different issues. And then, like you face these things as an individual, as a mom, as a working woman, and as a leader, as a boss. You have all these different situations that you have to make your own judgment. But then I think it's important that we're still in the progress. We still have a far from where we should be. And I think I need to remind myself that I think, as a professor said, that law is much more advanced than the society. So I tell myself that before anything, that I have to accept that I do have my own bias. And this is a time to really accept that in general, women are still very much disadvantaged in society to put their, the ability into what they are deserve to be. And then I think we should give a more opportunity. So that's the first thing I have to do. And then the second thing is I still need to, we as a, like leader group, or as a someone who actually been through and be, like I was given a lot of benefit as being a woman, or the first woman. I think there are more benefits than there was challenges and disadvantages, but whenever they need to make one exception, I think I was one of them. So I think as someone who was given this proportional exception, or opportunity, I think it's a time to give back. And then one of the reasons that I think I should have to give back is I need to work more on the system of giving a learning opportunity to someone who's coming after me. So I think be a good role model is always expected to do, but I think not being an individual good role model, I think it's still every woman who's in a leadership position has to realize that their action, whatever they're doing, is going to be judged upon or could be the benchmarked upon someone who's coming after that. For example, like no one really look at, okay, she did a good job or bad job. They will always say that, we gave a woman an opportunity. She did a good job. So it's going to be always the double standard, or the double expectation as an individual and as a woman. So I think that, and I think the next generation is that, I think when I was young, which is what the similar situation as many young Korean women who are well educated coming to a good workplace is going through, which is, oh, the things are different. I don't need to really work on or help other women. We are okay. It's not. I think they will soon face that their challenges. So I think the women need to look at beyond what their own circumstances and look at the bigger picture and then help each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jomin. So coming back to this question, can I ask this to our ambassador, Sripriya Ranganathan? Ma'am, how do you think you can, what in your view can women do to support the next generation of women to succeed?
I think the other panelists have actually said it all. First of all, connecting. Second of all, encouraging. Third of all, supporting. And I think and lastly, providing the inspiration by being role models. I think these are the 4 ways in which we can enable and encourage the newer generations of women who are coming into the workforce, who are seeking to build successful careers and achieve a good work-life balance to succeed. I think in my own life, I have found that it is not always true that women support each other, and I would in a way echo what Madeleine Albright said many years ago. That is that there is a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And I really think this can make so much of difference if women who have been through a certain learning curve, who have faced the challenges that we have all faced and will continue to face in balancing the often conflicting demands that are made on us. If we don't share our experiences with others, if we don't enable those who are in our direct teams with whom we can either hurt or help, if we don't give them the sort of support that they would be looking forward to, then we would really have failed in our responsibilities. I also think that a very big way in which we can enable and nurture the next generation of leaders is by projecting them. By telling those in our decision making positions that you're looking for a person for that role. I think that woman over there or that officer, regardless of gender, would be a great fit for that job. So I think we need to also make known the strengths of women whom we are familiar with, because certainly this is not something which they would, again, I come back to the conditioning. I don't think we project ourselves as much as possibly many of our male counterparts do. And perhaps that is something that we can do for each other, that we project on their behalf that this person who happens to be a woman has great experience in this field or has great skills in this field, and she could be considered for that job. And I think those are the kind of ways in which we can really support each other.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And we have a question in the chat box. Do we have Pooja Dikshit? Are you here? Can you come on the screen and raise your question directly?
Ma'am, my name is Pooja Dikshit. And my question is Pandit. Ma'am, in our Indian society, uh, many of women are facing lots of problems, like motherhood and simply we can say a specific job you can do, otherwise not to do. Our society tells us, uh, but they are not aware of their rights. They don't know about that rights, what they have. So how we can aware them? You have that right, you can do that and that.
Thank you, Pooja. You have raised a very relevant question because I agree with you. I've been working with students, girl students, especially both Goa, Pune, and in Delhi now in JNU. Many of them are not aware, you're right, because even of what to say in the workplace, rules at the workplace, especially sexual misconduct. Many times it may not be physical, it can be verbal abuse also. Meaning verbally, a male teacher might use words that are very sexually connotated, and many students do not understand. And also, it is an unequal relationship. You're very scared because your marks may go down. The teacher holds your this thing. So it's very important that we create structures that are very sensitive. So we have also said that any complaint coming from any girl student. So we are, we've got the ICC, that is the Internal Complaints Committee, where we are, which is provided by the government, and all universities are, and we have it here. We are doing sensitization programs, not only for the girl students, but also for the boys and the teachers. I've also decided to display these rules as passed by the Supreme Court, that what connotes sexual misconduct. Because many times the teacher says, oh, I only said something. But that also can intimidate somebody where there is an unequal relationship. So we are trying to educate everybody, sensitize, and so that, girls feel more secure. It's very important girls feel secure in spaces, especially educational spaces. I would say even in social spaces. And for that, every mother and father should socialize their children, whether boy or girl. That if the world is safe for boys, it has to be safe for girls. For that, they have to bring up their boys very well. Tell them, you cannot, unless it's done at the home, universities and others. So that's why I think I don't have a son. I only have a daughter. So it's very important that at home these are things. And Pooja, yours is a very relevant question, and I agree. I've come across some very, very cases of discrimination and domestic violence. It surprised me to a great degree. I hope we are doing our best, and by sensitizing and awareness campaigns, I think we'll have to go ahead. Thank you, Pooja, for your question.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. I think it's already we've had a discussion for more than an hour. But just last one question from my side, and I would like all the panelists to respond in just 1 minute. Professor Cheong, she had a meeting. She has already. She's not present here, but rest of the panelists, if you can just give this your response in just a minute. As we've spoken, we have discussed a lot about the gender roles and differences that we have in society, like in Indian society as well as in Korea. So based on that, Ms. Jobin, do you think gender equal world is a myth?
Yes, I think it's a myth. But I think it's, we can do much better than this.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Pandit?
I think in India, we have a very strong feminist tradition in our Indic civilization. I would only say go back to your fundamentals, because the strongest portfolios are with the women goddesses, not with the male gods. Meaning power with Parvati or Kali, and knowledge with Saraswati, and money with Mahalakshmi. And men, the names of our male gods are also after their wives. Umapati, Sitapati, Lakshmipati. There is no Patni in it. So a tradition that has always. So I think it's very important that we should understand that this is more a socially constructed identity. And I think we make our efforts both with men and women. There are a lot of men also who are very good feminists and humanists, I would say. I would say this is more human rights. It's not feminine rights. So I think India is doing well, and we are going much ahead. There's a lot of sympathetic understanding and awareness of this. So I think we have come a long way, but we have still a long way to go, like our colleague from South Korea said, a long, long way. But like we are taking the few small steps. And I'm sure that things will get better and better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. Now, Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan, last word from your side on this.
I think I would have to say that gender equality is not something that we will see in our lifetime. It is perhaps something that we will continue to make strides towards. We have made a lot of progress over the past in past several decades. I don't mean just in India. I think this is a cause which is a global cause. I think we have made tremendous progress, but we are nowhere near achieving true gender equality. I don't think I will live to see it in my lifetime. So yeah, that's my answer to this question.
Thank you, ma'am, for your response. Well, now it's the time to wrap up. It's been a very interesting discussion. Our panelists have given us enough food for thought for the participants, which I'm sure will leave all of us pondering over the critical issues and challenges that have been raised today. I'm sure this conversation will not and should not end with this video meeting. The voices must go beyond the four corners of our walls, and each one of us should speak out and be a voice for those marginalized and underprivileged, so that each girl like us coming from a small town may aspire to achieve their dreams in reality. Let me thank all the panelists, Her Excellency Shri Ranganathan, Ms. Heekyung, Jomin, Professor Chang, Professor Pandit, for a candid conversation and sharing your experiences and insights. And a big thanks to all the live participants for their presence and making some very interesting interventions. Now, in the end, as I say always after our meetings, stay tuned to our social media handles for more updates about our upcoming activities. Dhanyavad, kamsahamnida. Thank you all.